Building an audience with the king is the key to making money in podcasting. Insights from Chapter 2 of Dave Jackson's book, Profit from Your Podcast, here on episode number 3 of the Independent Podcaster Problem Solver Show with Dr. Brad Miller. Hey there, good people. Dr. Brad Miller here, and indeed, this is the Independent Podcaster Problem Solvers Show. And I am here because I've made a commitment to try to speak to the 3 major problem areas that I believe independent podcasters have, the problems that they have, and that has to do with audience building, that has to do with monetization, and has to do with tech. And we're doing that by reviewing books and courses and coaching programs in the area of podcasting. That's number 1. We're listening to your problems. You can go to our website, podcastindependent.com/voicemail, particularly if you're having issues in monetization. We'd like to hear about that. And we're talking with podcasting gurus who get their insights on this as well. Talking with Dave, we're going to be reviewing Dave Jackson's book, Profit from Your Podcast, today. And we're also pointing you to some of the best podcasting events. I have an event. It's called podindy.com, podindy.com. And at this event, Dave Jackson will be there live to unpack his book, Profit from Your Podcast, which is going to audio very soon. And it's all about how then your podcast can also be, the profiting aspect of your podcast can also be amplified by AI. We're going to have an element there with that. Podindy.com is a live event and a virtual live event held November 9th, 2024 in Indianapolis, Indiana, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. You can come to Indianapolis in person for $57 or go virtual for $27. The downloads are just $37. And the good news is, because you're here listening to my voice here today, you can use the coupon code INDY, I-N-D-Y, for 15% off of all tickets. Let's go to podindy.com for details. Dave Jackson says this in Chapter 2 of his book, Profit from Your Podcast. No audience, no money. Nothing happens until you build an audience. That's the first of the first things. Who is your audience, and do they have any money? So that is the S. And how do you build in the audience? Dave Jackson says that content is king. And the essence of content is it's content that moves you, it taps into your emotions, it entertains you, it makes you laugh, it makes you cry. And that has to do with the quality of the content that you have in your podcast. He talks a lot in this chapter about how it takes some time, it takes some effort in order to derive the proper content for your audience. But the first step is to figure out who your target audience is, because everybody is not the acceptable answer. We talked about this in a previous episode. We were talking about finding your niche. And then finding your niche, bring value to every conversation. Make friends with people. Make friends with your potential listeners. Bring value in every conversation. There's also power in consistency. You don't want to lose people's trust. How do you gain people's trust? You gain people's trust by showing up consistently. If that's once a week or once a month, whatever it is, you show up that way. And you offer people good value. You do not shirk on their different things. And he goes on to say about the importance of listening. Dave says, when I have someone walk up to me and say, "Hey, Dave, I listened to your show. I love it, and I love it." Dave always says, I stop whatever I'm doing and I give them my undivided attention, and I ask them what they like about the show and what I could change about the show. And this has to do with getting feedback. You can get feedback in person. You can get feedback online, social media. You can get feedback with surveys in all kinds of ways. So Dave covers lots of topics here in Chapter 2, and I think they're all important about developing your customer, or developing the content that your customer is served by. So that has to do with something that's emotional. That has something to do that hurts people on the heart. It makes them think, or gives them maybe a groan, or it makes them, entertains them. But it does take effort. He talks about some podcasters who will take an hour or more of preparation for every minute that they have on their podcast episode. He also talks about how it's so important to engage your audience. Do some things that bigger shows can't do. That is, for instance, if you start to develop a following, literally email or call up your listeners and get their insights. It will shock them and will give you great insight as well. Provide value and building trust is all what we're talking about here. And this has to do with understanding some different approaches, understanding that you can engage them in things that they are interested in, and you can have a list, have your listeners be active in your life as well. So you can have them respond to surveys that you do and get that type of thing. And if you see people in person in real life, have that conversation and get a selfie picture with them. These are some of the things that you can do about the core of a successful podcast. And so he talks about the aspects of compelling content, which is emotional and relevant. And he talks about this. Know your audience, know your needs, identify your audience, and direct engagement is critical to this. Resonant content. I had this experience in my own life here just recently, just actually today. I was able to talk to a person who has been listening to my podcast, cancerandcomedy.com, and they shared how important the episodes have been. And I was able to ask her and break down with her what was some of the good things about it and some of the things she said could be improved. She loved the personal stories that I and my co-host tell, but she also really loved when we interviewed other guests. And so we're going to be trying to look to have more guests on our podcast based on this conversation that we had. Be present for your audience and understand they are giving you a great gift of your time. You cannot become profitable in your podcast without building an audience. That is the first thing. And you build an audience through great and superb content. Content is king. So I just think this chapter number 2 about building an audience is just a treasure trove of wisdom to inspire that is inspiring to me and aspirational to you, the current podcaster. Focus on understanding and engaging your audience, create significant, impactful content, and maintain trust and consistency. That's what you got to do. So I just invite you to tune in to consistently the next several episodes here of the Independent Podcaster Problem Solver Show, as we're going to go even deeper in today's book about how to deal with this problem of monetization and his book, Profit from Your Podcast. And that's what we're going to do. Remember, what we do here at the Independent Podcaster Problem Solver Show is to review books and courses and coaching from people like Dave Jackson. We listen to your needs. You can always go to podcastindependent.com/voicemail and leave us your voicemail, particularly if you have an issue regarding monetization. We'd love to hear about that as well. And then we also like to point you to the best in some of the podcasting conferences and events where you can make these personal contacts with people. Just a reminder that I have an event. It's called podindy.com. Dave Jackson will be there in person to unpack his book, Profit from Your Podcast. It's going on audio very soon. And we're going to have an element of how this can be amplified with AI. The website is podindy.com, Podindy. It's a live event, November 9th, 2024, in Indianapolis, Indiana, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. But you can get a virtual ticket for $27. And you can use the code INDY to get 15% off your price of that. Hope to see you there. Now, I want you to look forward now to the next episode number 4 of the Independent Podcaster Problem Solver Show. We're going to go into the next episode number 4, where if content is king. As we talked about in Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, we're going to talk about how building an audience, that presentation is queen. I invite you to stay tuned here. My name is Dr. Brad Miller. I'm here to serve you, to help you, the independent podcaster, to solve your problems. Until next time, good people, keep working at it.